You're live.
Great. Welcome to room 11. Sorry about that. There's a mix up on the booking. We will be in room 11 next week. Also just need to comment because I've been doing this like a couple weeks. Go bird. All right, done business. A couple of announcements before we get started. Gentle reminder to keep letting leadership know if you plan to be out of the building. Floor times will be 10, 3, 3, and 9:30 this week and next. We'll watching the floor to see, or watching committees to see when bills come out. If we have to change that, we'll keep you posted. Crossover dates, March 14th for policy and March 21st for money committees. Speaker soiree is finally here this week, Thursday. You can buy tickets at the door if you haven't yet. It really is a lot of fun. So highly encourage everyone to come.
Laura?
Yeah.
What's the dress code?
I would say business casual or whatever we wear here. Some people really dress up. I'll go in what I'm wearing here. Some people change.
All right. Thank you.
Typical Vermont party, right?
Yeah. Somebody in jeans and flannel, somebody in white tie,
Exactly.
tails.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There are more seats. There are more lots of seats.
Yeah, lots of seats all around. Please feel free to come up. There's 2 there, 2 here, 2 here. We're making do. A couple decorum reminders. So remember the debate is through the speaker. So when you're standing to talk about anything, you're looking at the speaker only. Please don't start talking or packing up until the speaker gavels out. It really gets loud, and we should be following the gavel. And most importantly, vote explanations should be short. As a reminder, they have to be written and signed. They can be emailed. We do prefer, and some of you may not know this, there are sheets of paper where the pages sit that you can use to write out your vote explanation. They are, if you're standing at the podium, they're in the first drawer on the left side, closest to the podium. And you can go down and grab a couple, put them in your desk so that you have them. If you want to write it out, it helps to keep it short is what we're trying to do. And I think that is it for decorum. So we have a lot of topics today, and I'm gonna switch things around because I don't see all of our UVM nominees here. So we're gonna go right into topics, which will be the road show is a little different today. It is Peter and Charlie on education. So come on up.
I'm Peter's interpreter.
Morning, everybody. Peter Combs from the House Education Committee. So last week, Thursday, we received a major presentation from the Secretary, which really sort of outlined the governance model for what the governor's proposal is and has. It talked about the 5 districts, the 5-member boards governing each. It talked about the setup of school choice schools, they call them, the sort of how school choice and these districts and everything, how it all works together. I just want to make a few things kind of clear, everybody. 1, we don't have a bill yet. 2, we are expecting a bill this week, but it's going to be a short form bill, which is to say that there are major gaps in a lot of this that need to be filled in. We are in week whatever of the legislature. We're closing in on March quickly. And I just to sort of provide a few examples. So we have got the proposal is for 5 school district across state, each one governed by a 5, maybe more member board. Since you're essentially starting from scratch, we would need legislation that clearly lists what are the powers of these new boards. I think, as I said last week, starting from like who decides where every single child in the state goes to school, right up to who negotiates a statewide teacher's contract, And the level of detail that is really needed is enormous. I'd call it overwhelming. And, so, we were probably left with far more questions than we were, answers, because these were big ideas that need to be fleshed out. We are now, juggling time, what can be done realistically, and what is being proposed. And so we are going to spend our time kind of navigating that as best we can. But it's fair to say there were some big implications in what was proposed, for our state education system. That, frankly, we have a lot of consideration to do, a lot of information to get, and a lot of decisions to make. And we have a ticking clock behind us at the time. So just to sort of give a sense of where we're at and kind of what we're up against.
Charlie. Oh, thank you, Judith. Just to add a little bit, the House Ways and Means Committee likes to define ourselves as a committee of nerds. So appropriate to that, the committee has a group of folks right now going through spreadsheets with the APA consultants to try to understand what's comprised of their numbers and the base formula, and then also the weightings to get to where the numbers are that they've put on the JFO website. So that's really to understand the numbers so that it's providing enough funds to fund education, and then identify what the gap is between where we are now and what a future state looks like. So that's where we are. I'm trying to figure that out.
Any questions? Angela and then Candace, and there's no microphone, but they say that we can be picked up, but just speak loud if you can.
Okay, thank you. Angela Arsenault from Williston. So Peter, given what you just said, Chair Conlon, given what you just said, how should we be thinking about this? I don't even know, question and talking about it in our communities. I mean, what is possible? What is likely? I just don't see, given the calendar. I don't see how there was ever an expectation, maybe on the administration's part or anyone's part, that this could be done in one session. I don't think that's a fair expectation. So, yet I think that expectation has been set out by forces outside of this room, certainly. So how should we be talking about this?
I think everybody's probably hearing a lot from constituents, especially school districts, either with big concerns or big questions. And what I've honestly said to people is, I've got the same concerns, I've got the same questions, and we're trying to get down to it. Just, one example, I think probably everybody has received emails from CTE center directors, because there is a proposal for new CTE governance and new CTE funding formulas. We really have very little detail on what it all means. So I would just say, I share we have the same concerns, we have the same questions. We also have concepts and ideas that we believe, can be talked about, can be implemented. Things that I think everybody has some agreement on, such as class size minimums, optimal school sizes, especially when you're talking about secondary schools. The funding formula changes more in terms of clarity and understanding as opposed to quantities and amounts. But I think it's fair to say that the clock is ticking. We have questions and concerns, but we also have areas that we think there's general agreement on that we can move forward on.
But to your point too, it's not a 1-year implementation either. This is a 4 to 5 to a decade long implementation plan to really look at it.
And I think the thing to remember is we said from the beginning, there's short-term and long-term policies we will need to make. And I think the governor's proposal, which again, we're still waiting on a lot of details, also said from the outset, this is a multi-year process. So I hope that it helps. Good. Candace.
Candace Waitsfield, thank you. So I have a question on clarification and then just a question. So Charlie, you were talking about ways and means. Right now, in terms of the financial picture, you all are working on that, and I assume putting together some assumptions to see how this bigger plan will save us money and also raise teacher salaries and do all the things that, so at this point, we don't have any financial picture, but you're working on it.
They were trying to understand the underlying assumptions as to what APA and the Agency of Education has presented as being able to save $184 million in what, 3 years, 4 years in the future state. And what those look like for configurations. Does it make sense? Do we believe in those numbers and that kind of stuff? So employing the Joint Fiscal Office also to help go through those numbers.
Okay.
So that's really testing it.
We've asked the agency to do some modeling to see what it looks like to take these numbers and apply them to a real school district in the state. And we're hoping to get that during we have a 4-committee joint hearing on Friday.
Okay.
At the same time, I want to say we're looking at the property tax credit that's been proposed by the governor, and what that looks like. So, and trying to figure out, as a lot of our voters want us to come here and work on property tax relief. What does that look like?
Okay, thank you. And then my question is on the vouchers. So, and I haven't heard a lot of, do you have any more detail on this voucher system? I mean, I've heard that they're saying that students can have choice of any school in the state, public or private.
We're not quite sure what the implications are of what they proposed. So I could not stand here and definitively tell you what it all means. But we're going to just need to drill down, if that's the path we choose to go.
Thank you.
Kath, and then Sarita, and then, Leanne, and then we will have to move on.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding in terms of what expectations we have about what the administration is going to be delivering. So they delivered their high-level kind of narrative plan, and then they followed up with a few more high-level thoughts on the funding, the foundation formula, and then some thoughts on tuitioning and governance. And then the final delivery is going to be a short form bill. That's
I think that the answer is yes. And I think that the short form bill is there to meet deadlines for bill introduction. But yes, one of the big questions will be is who's fleshing that out? It's our job to review bills that are presented. And then it's our job to decide what it is this legislature wants to move forward with.
Safe to say it's more than a paragraph, though.
Yeah.
It's a long, short one.
It's a long short form bill.
Sarita,
Thank you. Just in the midst of all this, where
can you
is,
introduce yourself? I'm
oh, I'm
sorry.
sorry, Sarita Husband, protester. Where are we with school construction?
School construction is absent from the proposal from the governor so far that we've seen. But it is something that the House Education Committee is working diligently on.
Thank you.
Leanne,
You have a bill,
introduce yourself. please.
okay.
Yeah, we actually have a bill.
Leanne Harple, Orleans, or sorry if this is a dumb freshman question, but my question is, in all of this proposal, the thing that my constituents are writing to me the most about right this second is about the proposal to eliminate the universal meals. And so I'm wondering, do I say you should, can I just tell you that, or should I say you should send that concern to the Ways and Means or to the governor to let them know how many people feel this way?
I think sharing that concern with the caucus is appropriate at all times.
And I would also say, please share it with the governor.
Okay,
Or ask them to share.
Yes,
okay.
yes, definitely. Okay, thank you. Lots more to come on that. Is Robin shy standing back there? No? Okay, Dan, we're gonna have Dan Noyes come up from Human Services to talk about H13, which is an act relating to Medicaid payment rates for home and community-based service providers and designated and specialized service agencies.
All right, thank you so much. I'm Dan Noyes. I represent Woolkit, Hyde Park, Johnson and Belvedere on Human Services Committee. And so this bill, we've actually passed this bill in years, a couple of times over the years. And what it does is it looks at our reimbursement rates for home and community-based providers. So these are agencies like adult days, residential care providers, everything except nursing homes. And what we're often tasked with here in this building is saying, okay, how much are we gonna give to each of these agencies so that they can remain open and able to provide services to older Vermonters, individuals with disabilities across our state. So currently, we don't really know what these cost. And when we had a rate study a couple of years ago, just on a small portion, we found that some of them were up to 80% underfunded. So it's going to allow us in this building to look at what it costs to deliver these services and try to address the issues before these go out of business, just like we saw with adult day providers where they just closed because their Medicaid reimbursement rates, or residential care facilities. We've lost like 23 of them since 2020. And when these agencies close, kind of the next step up, eventually ending at nursing home level of care for some individuals, which is really our most expensive way to provide care to people. So we have the ability to reach upstream and kind of meet people where they are and provide them with the care they need in their home and in their community before they end up in an institutionalized setting where it costs us so much more. We just saw in the BAA where we had to provide $24 million in utilization to nursing homes because what we had estimated that they were going to need wasn't enough. And that's just for 6 months. So if anyone has any questions, I see Robin here, so I want to make sure she is.
You get your question.
We have Barbara and then her.
All right.
Barbara Rachelton, Burlington. So my question is, Lori mentioned the title, and I'm wondering if that includes the preferred providers from ADAP, because I know one thing that I've heard a lot about in our committee is like Act One stopped doing the work that they were doing because they were losing money.
Mhm.
And so now the governor wants corrections to do it, which feels like the equivalent of the nursing home example you just gave. So will this bill address?
Yeah, so what we're looking to do is all Medicaid service providers across the state to have them in some sort of a rotation of a rate study. So maybe it's over a 5-year period where we just keep having a mechanism to look at what it costs to provide services to the SAs, the DAs, the SSAs, so all of those specialized service agencies, so that they don't all of a sudden find themselves closing because they can't seem to make it work. Because we're not giving them the money they need to keep the lights on. Yes.
Herb Olson, Starksboro, and I heard it includes designated agencies.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you're focusing in on the relationship or a little bit of attention in terms of what designated agencies can do and the relationship with schools. And that kind of conundrum.
Yes.
And how to make that work a little better.
So we're looking at what it costs to provide the services that they're supposed to be providing. So we're not looking at like what services we're just looking at trying to get cost data back so that we know where there's deficiencies, which ones are about to close up. So it's more from the Medicaid cost to the state.
But I will say, sorry, Daisy, I think you're probably just about to say this, the House Healthcare Committee has been taking testimony about 6 beyond 6 and designated agencies and from schools. So that's where that work's being done. I don't know if you have anything to add or if you have a question.
I have a question. Fun. When was the last rate study done for DAs and SSAs?
So we had one done 2 years ago, but it was for just residential care, and enhanced residential care, and there was adult days. So we were able to put a portion of this bill into the budget a few years ago.
Okay, because rate studies take a while. Are they
Mhm.
costly or?
I think that, yes, I mean, it requires someone to go out and do that research, but I think we need to be on a rotation because it costs a lot more money to open an adult day after it closed or to find someone who's going to start up a residential care facility. So it's less than trying to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely. Thank you for moving this forward,
No
Dan.
problem.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Darren, then that'll be last.
Territory, right, from Moretown. Dan, when will we, see this bill on the floor?
We're going to vote it out today.
You're voting it out today.
Yep.
Does it, and it probably has to go to appropriation. Does that go to appropriation? We will let you know when it'll be on the floor.
Come right to the floor.
Figure that out.
I'm ready to pass this.
All right.
I've said it so many times.
All right, I've asked the chair of appropriations to come talk to us a little bit about the conversations she's having around the state and the federal funding we receive.
Yes, I have a little folder called Federal Funding Chaos. Robin Shy from Middlebury. We have on our committee page is a presentation that we asked Emily Byrne from the Joint Fiscal Office to give to us. I think last week, there's a page that looks like this. So just so you know, if you open it, that's kind of what you want to see. We asked, she was doing this presentation for the Treasurer's Working Group. The Treasurer and the Attorney General are also working on trying to understand what's happening. And we know there's a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability to what's going on right now. So in 2025, 36% of the funds in our budget and then of the work that we do at the state level is federal funds, So that's $3.1 billion. This does not include the money that goes to municipalities, that goes to colleges and universities, that goes to directly to our public schools or to any of our nonprofits. So just the state part is $3.1 billion. We don't really have a savings account to like just take from if we were to lose all those funds. A large part of that, as you might imagine, is related to Medicaid. And that's what this little chart is. So if you go and you download the presentation, you can get those details. The transportation, roads and bridges, we get a lot of federal funds for transportation. We also have K-12, but natural resources. We just had the libraries come in to us. I'm trying to get departments and agencies to come in and talk to us who could be affected by federal funds. So our libraries actually would significantly be affected. Their dollars aren't as big as Medicaid dollars, but they're kind of an important part of our communities and our life in Vermont. What to do? Well, we don't really quite know what to do, except what we want to do is be as educated as we can about what we know we can do and see if there are ways that we can beef up authority or whatever, in case things happen. And things can happen while we're in session and things can happen while we're out of session. So the Joint Fiscal Committee and the Emergency Board are both two places where we meet off session. I sit on both of those as House Appropriations Chair. We meet off session to deal with issues that come up in the off session. So we're kind of reviewing our authority in those areas and saying, well, is there anything that we can do to expand authority or should do on a temporary basis? We don't know that yet. We're just starting to look into this. We're also reviewing rescission language. During the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, the consensus review came in January of 2009 at something like $150 million below. So they had to cut $150 million out of the budget for the rest of that half year. So their budget adjustment was a cut. So it's sort of the opposite of what we just did. So understanding how rescissions work, there was a paper that Maria Blair from the Joint Fiscal Office did a year or so ago on what happens in the event of a federal government shutdown, which is also looming in March. I had actually forgotten about that. But the continuing resolution ends again in March. We don't know what's going to happen. So we're trying to arm ourselves with information at this point, which is about all we can do. We've also asked the treasurer's coming in for his budget tomorrow, and we've asked him to also fill us in a little bit about what the working group is doing and how they're thinking about things. Because we want to understand how people are thinking about it. And then Sarah Clark from the Agency of Administration is going to be coming in probably not until next week at this point to come talk to us about how they're thinking about it as well. And then the Agency of Commerce and Community Development is working with somebody else. I can't remember. She's heading a tariff group. What's going to happen if there are tariffs? So we're trying to just gather information at this point because there are way too many what if scenarios for us to say, well, if it happens this way, then we'll do that because it's just too uncertain. So that's what we're thinking about, and happy to take any questions or other things we ought to be thinking about. Let me know.
Any questions? We'll do a lot more on this today, and I always check out their committee page for information. Great, thank you, Robin. All right, we have two quick bills, and then we're gonna go to the UVM trustee nominees. So Barbara, you wanna come up? So Barbara is gonna talk about H44, right?
No.
No, Barbara's gonna talk about H98 and act relating to confirmatory, am I saying that right? Adoption.
You
All
are.
right.
So let me first say, what is a confirmatory adoption? It is a more streamlined adoption process for those who are already legal parents under state law. So you might ask, why do we need this? Couple of reasons. Many rights and responsibilities depend on that legally recognized parent-child relationship, including making medical decisions, inheritance, if a relationship breaks off, custody, I mean, it's big. Vermont, so when people use assisted technology to get pregnant and have their family, it creates some nuances in some states, not in Vermont. In Vermont, our parentage laws that we did a few years ago are really clear. But we have certainly heard from many people that people move, people travel. And so in order to make sure that Vermont families have the security that they need in other states, we are doing this bill. So one thing that's really good about this bill is the US Constitution says that states are required to recognize validly issued court judgments. And so it's sort of a slam dunk that if somebody has a confirmatory adoption, it will be recognized in other states. There are currently 8 states that have these laws. I know that our committee had a bill in its last biennium that we did not get to, and it's pretty important right now. The other reason that this is important are the adoption resources, getting a home study, getting fingerprints. It's time consuming, it's expensive, it's intrusive, and needs to be used for creating permanence for kids and not really, I don't want to say wasted, but used for families that are already families and don't really need to go through a home study and getting those fingerprints in order to be recognized in court. So I'll end there unless there are questions.
Any questions? Great.
Sorry, I think this is quick.
Okay.
Kathleen James from Manchester. So just to make sure I'm understanding, so Vermont laws make it very clear that someone is a parent, even if they necessarily haven't gone through formal adoption. So this streamlines that in case they move to another state
Or travel.
or travel. Okay.
Great, thank you. And next we have H 44, an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to the laws governing impaired driving with Ian Good. Now, let me first ask Barbara, did you vote this out yet?
This afternoon.
Hopefully this afternoon.
Hopefully this afternoon. Okay.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to speak in front of the caucus for the first time on such an important and interesting bill as an act relating to the miscellaneous amendments to the laws governing impaired driving. So I'm glad it's the last one to get to talk about today. So I'm not gonna bore us all with like all the details. You can look forward to that on the floor report tomorrow. But basically what's happening here is when you got laws and then how the laws are being implemented on the ground. The oversight that we do to make sure that what's written in the books and what's happening on the ground is what we want. And so the oversight that our committee has done on DUIs has shown that there are some issues on consistency, clarity, and fairness with how DUI impaired driving laws are being implemented in Vermont. So H44 seeks to fix those things, and I think it does, and to kind of highlight 2 of the most sort of like meaty issues that are in H44.
The first has to do with when you get once a law enforcement officer gets a warrant for your blood to test whether you have alcohol or drugs in your system. Currently, if you decline that warrant, the only way that a prosecutor has to charge you is with an obstruction of justice charge. That's in Title 13. It's a criminal felony. That nexus, it's not connected to the nexus of crime, which is actually a DUI. So H44 would allow for a prosecutor to charge you with a refusal on refusing a warrant for your blood. That's important because it gets to the rehabilitative element of a DUI, which is, going through the classes and making sure you get your license back, and it takes it out of Title 13. That's one. And the other is reporting DUIs from family court to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Right now, there's a lot of vagueness about what gets reported from family court to the DMV because family court proceedings are confidential. H44 would clarify those. And unfortunately, for someone like myself, who's a criminal defense attorney, I can no longer sort of hope that my client's license won't get suspended because there was a miscommunication and it never went over to DMV. So now, if you are in the juvenile court and you have a proceeding and your license should be suspended, that should be communicated to DMV and your license will be suspended. And that's important because we want to make sure that there is, as I said, clarity, consistency, and fairness across the board when it comes to these laws. We voted this out last week. It was 11-0-0, so not particularly controversial. And we heard a lot of testimony and across the board, it was supported.
So it's on the floor tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, we got some questions. Savita and then Jonathan.
I'm wondering if you're looking at any other legal drugs and impairment and determining if someone is impaired while using other legal drugs besides alcohol.
So yes. So when it comes to drugs in your system and impairment, it does not matter what the drug is. So you can't drive impaired.
Mm-hmm.
The drug tests, one of the reasons why the H44 is trying to fix this issue is that when there was a suspicion that someone was driving under the influence of a drug, not alcohol, right now, if they refused the warrant for their blood, the only way the prosecutor could, address that would be to get them with an obstruction of justice. So to answer your question, you can't drive in Vermont and be impaired to the slightest degree, no matter what you take. So we're not really looking at what particular drugs it is. It's that the law enforcement and the prosecutor has a way to address if you're not willing to submit to the warranted blood test to determine whether you're under the influence of a drug.
But I know we have this other way to determine if you're under the influence of alcohol.
Yep.
Are there any tests being developed, let's say, other than a blood test to determine other impairment?
That is beyond the scope of H44. But I would say what you're kind of getting at is the distinction between what's called the DMT, which is the evidentiary breath sample, and the blood sample, right? Those are like the two we're talking about. In Vermont and across the country, taking your breath is a less intrusive seizure than taking your blood. And that's why when we're talking about breath samples, there's no warrant. But when you take someone's blood, that's more intrusive. It's more of a take from the state. So the state has a higher burden, so they get the warrant. And the issue right now is that if you decline the warrant, there's no repercussion other than this heavier fine or this heavier potential crime that isn't really connected to the underlying crime.
Yeah. Just one real quick.
Stick to the bill.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so they take the blood, are they looking for a particular drug, or are they looking at all different drugs that could impair driving?
That is a good question. The warrant has to be narrowly defined. So as far as which ones they're asking for, I don't know the answer to that. But this is why it's really important that we put these before the caucus first so that we get an answer for this before we bring it to the floor tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Good job. Jonathan, and then we're going to move on.
I'm Jonathan Cooper in Pownell.
Is the refusal of the warrant also similar? Is it a felony as well? Are we replacing a felony with a felony?
No, misdemeanor.
And can we hear what makes? How come?
How come?
Yeah, I mean, is there any, is that seen as, that's just the way it's defined, or that's a good thing? That was.
Yeah, so if you refuse the breath test, that's a misdemeanor. If, right, so we're trying to line up the crime with the punishment. And right now, the punishment for refusing a warrant for a blood test is a felony obstruction of justice. If you refuse a breath sample in the same instance, it will be a misdemeanor refusal. So we want to make sure that we're attaching the appropriate punishment with the crime. Also, if you're a Vermonter and you exercise your constitutional right to refuse the warrant, we want to make sure that you're risking the right, like the potential consequence is attached to it correctly as well. So it's protecting both sides.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, and I was just informed by our great assistant clerk that this was referred to appropriation, so it will not be on the floor tomorrow.
Yeah, all this.
No, it makes so much. We need to hear ahead of time. We need to hear ahead of time.
Good job, Ian. It was educational and informative.
Exactly. We are, I know, sorry, UVM trustees, I keep pushing you. We're gonna hear from two more quick people, and then I promise we'll do that. So Woody Page, do you wanna come up and do yours real quick? And then Monique, you're on tap.
And here.
That's fine, just speak up.
I have a resolution to present to you. And generally in my caucus, we do not like resolutions, or we don't support resolutions that affect or have an effect, or speak about things that occur outside of Vermont. But this resolution does. It not only addresses things that are occurring outside of Vermont, but also inside our state, particularly along the border. So my resolution is for you to consider is to urge President Trump to refrain from
I'm okay, yeah.
It's a resolution to urge President Trump to refrain from imposing tariffs on goods and services imported from Canada. This resolution only addresses the economic issue relating to Vermont. So why am I doing this? Well, my hometown, my district is Newport. And from my home, I can look out my window and I can see Canada. and pretty much anywhere you go in Newport, you can see Canada. For those that have recently traveled there, you know this as well. Particularly also along the Essex and Orleans border, you can sometimes inadvertently cross without going through customs. My house is less than 10 miles driving distance from the border. Many of my constituents have relatives that live across the border, or in my case, full disclosure, I'm married to a former Montreal woman who did not put me up to this. We also have, many of us have that live along the border have friends that have summer and winter homes throughout Vermont. Many of our Canadian friends own chalets at Jay or Stowe. And in the summer, as well as in the winter, many Canadians frequent our restaurants, golf courses, bike trails, and spend their loonies or their dollars in Vermont. Some economic information: Vermont receives $2.6 billion in trade with our neighbor, and exports $680 million back to Canada. Oftentimes, one will see lumber being transported to Canada, with lumber returning, and almost on a daily basis, one can see very granite traveling to Stansted, Quebec. Vermont also receives fuel oil, kerosene, propane, and gasoline from our northern neighbor.
We also receive nearly 25% of our electricity from Hydro-Quebec. And let us not forget the centuries-old sport of curling, which some of us actually travel across the border to participate with our friends. In addition to our General Assembly, we're asking President Trump to refrain from imposing tariffs on goods. The U.S. Secretary of State is requested to send a copy to Governor Scott, Prime Minister Trudeau, and the Quebec Premier Legault, as well as our Vermont congressional delegation. I hope that maybe you'll consider signing on to this. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And so they can find you in the building or at your house seat for.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Monique,
Hey, everybody.
can you introduce yourself?
Monique, Representative Priestley, Bradford, Fairleigh, West Fairleigh. So everybody should have got an email both yesterday and this morning. So what was last year's 121, the Comprehensive Data Privacy Act. It originally had 3 chapters that covered data privacy, and for all ages and health and heightened risk categories, as well as updates to data broker laws in Vermont, and then also the Kids Code, Age Appropriate Design Code. Those have come back as 3 bills that I'm introducing this week. And so if you'd like to co-sponsor, please reply to the email, fill out the form, or you can text me or find me and try and collect those by end of day today.
Okay, thank you. All right, UVM trustees. So the election is February 20th. It'll be a joint assembly, so the House and the Senate vote together. We have 3 open seats. 2 of the nominees are incumbents and they're running again. So there's 1 actual open seat, and so they can tell you who's who when they come up. And so I've asked them all to come in if they choose to and do like 3 minutes of who they are and why they're running. No questions, but you can reach out to them afterwards and get any information, ask any questions before the 20th. So I'm going to go in alphabetical order because that seems most fair. So, and hopefully I know my alphabet. Just come up.
Why not reverse alphabetical?
You want to go last?
Our first motion to suspend rules.
Right, there you go.
I move that we suspend. Thank you. Those who know me well know I'm an introvert, so getting up and talking about myself is not something I do naturally. I'm a listener rather than a talker. One thing I think is important here is we are obviously a political organization, but the UVM Board of Trustees, I think the legislature really needs to look at the experience and background of the people running to see what might be the best fit, what the board might need. A little bit about me. I grew up in a Navy family. We lived all around the country, Virginia, Florida, California, Hawaii, Colorado. When my father retired, I ended up in Oklahoma. I attended both of the large public universities. I was at University of Oklahoma studying zoology and botany, and then at Oklahoma State University, where I got my doctorate in veterinary medicine. I had an Air Force scholarship, so I had military service and as base veterinarian in Incirlik, Turkey, and then switched to the Army, where I got my specialty training in laboratory animal medicine, and spent most of my professional career in biomedical research. I was at National Institutes of Health for 19 years, which is probably the most foremost biomedical research institution in the world. I was at National Cancer Institute contract for a while, and then I became a commissioned public health service officer and branch chief at National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, which is hard to say in one breath. And then I moved to Vermont, had this part-time job in the legislature. This is my 8th term. I was on agriculture and forestry for a long time. Then I was in transportation. Now I'm in environment and also in the rules committee, as you probably know. UVM is an impressive institution, and the importance to the state, I don't think, can be overemphasized. It has impact on so many fronts. And the Board of Trustees really has oversight of the whole thing, but I think there are 3 main pillars that are the most important. One is budget, financial management, and long-term financial solvency, where I have almost no expertise. But the self-perpetuating
board has financial wizards they bring in, and I think that's covered. The other two pillars, though, I think I can contribute a lot. That's education, obviously the most important piece of the undergraduates and graduate students, and the expanding role of the university in research. And that's where I bring a lot of experience. I have background in sciences, veterinary medicine, biomedical research, public health, also agriculture, sustainability, financial management, and music, theater, and humanities. So why am I running? Education is a real passion of mine. It's provided me with a career path and a lot of opportunities, and I wouldn't have had them otherwise, so it's important. There's a lot more that needs to be done.
No, you're good, you're good.
3 minutes.
I know, it's hard.
A whole life in 3 minutes. Anyway, so a lot of more challenges. Obviously, we know about student housing and housing in Burlington in general. That's a huge thing that has to be faced. Need to raise funds for the multipurpose center. There are always deferred maintenance issues that have to be dealt with, and we need to control tuition, room and board, and fees. UVM, compared to private institutions, is fairly affordable, but compared to public institutions, it's one of the most expensive. And I experienced that personally as I wrote tuition checks when my daughter was there. So UVM is about building futures and giving students the opportunities and they need and the skills they need. And it'd be an honor to serve as a legislative trustee for University of Vermont and State Agricultural College. If I get elected, let me know your thoughts and questions and ideas, and ask me questions anytime.
Great, thank you so
Thank you.
much, John. Senator Scott Beck.
I will try to be brief. I think I've met most of you during my time in the House or the first part of this year, but I'm Scott Beck. I was in the House for 10 years. Now I'm over in the Senate, running for UVM trustee. Just a little bit about myself. I educated post-secondary at public colleges and public universities. I've been on a faculty at a public college during a very difficult equal opportunity experience. I'm happy to discuss that with any of you at any time. And I have my two youngest daughters graduated from the University of Vermont in 22 and 23. And my youngest son is he's a junior. He'll graduate next year from UVM. And over my time in the House, I've had a lot of opportunities to interact with UVM, the president's office, other people over there. So I understand the university a little bit. I'm not an expert on the university. And I don't want to overpromise what my impact on, UVM is an aircraft carrier, right? But when I look at UVM, it's an academic engine, just got tier 1 status. It's an employment engine. It's an economic engine, not just in the Burlington area, but throughout the state with their outreach and impact. But it does have certainly a disproportionate impact on South Burlington and Burlington, especially along the lines of public safety and housing, which have continued to be, areas of tension in that corner of the state. And so I'm just really, I see my role on the board as being somebody to help take all the really great stuff that's happening at UVM and to try to smooth out some of the friction points that are occurring in the Burlington, South Burlington area. And I think I have a pretty decent history in the House of trying to work like that to try to find win-win situations. I don't really have an agenda going in other than just to make UVM a better university that's more accessible to Vermont kids, more affordable for Vermont kids. And it is a great partner for all the communities that touch it on a daily basis. And so I'll keep it short because I know you guys have been here for a while.
Thank you.
I hope to, if I don't, I hope to speak with all of you before the 20th. And if I'm elected beyond that, and let me know what your thoughts are on the University of Vermont. So thank you.
Thank you. Coach, Representative Christie is also running, but he could not be with us today. So reach out to him if you have questions. Troy, you're up next.
Good morning. My name is Troy Hedrick. For those of you who I have not met, good to meet you, but find me and let's have a deeper conversation. I'm going to pass these out. I know I've been handing them out over the past few weeks. So if you've got one already, just maybe pass it along. I pulled back a staff to, you don't get one and you want one. I'm a state representative from Burlington, specifically Chittenden 15. I moved to Vermont in 1996 to take a job at the University of Vermont. And also to enroll in their doctoral program that I didn't finish, and I don't intend to finish. That's a separate conversation. I'm happy to have it with you. There are very specific reasons why. Before that, I worked at a private college at Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. Prior to that, another land-grant state institution in Colorado while I was doing my graduate work. My own undergraduate degree is from the state system of Wisconsin. Also, both of my daughters have graduated from UVM. My youngest daughter also finished her master's degree in special education. My older daughter moved on to her master's and PhD at Johns Hopkins and now teaches and directs the undergraduate nutrition program at George Washington in DC, doing food insecurity policy. My wife works as a senior director at the Community College of Vermont, serves on the President's Council. So we are absolutely a higher ed family. It is in my blood. I have so much passion and love for the University of Vermont in particular. It's where I've spent the majority of my professional career in student services. I work on the staff side of the house, helping students stay students. I see my work as retention work. I am very upfront about the fact that I think it's very important that we have a student-centered voice, a staff-centered voice, a faculty-adjacent centered voice on the board. That is not the case right now. We have tried legislation over the past biennium in this and hope to get that across the finish line. But I think that's an important voice that's missing on the board right now. This is a particularly important as we look. I'm very worried about the commodification of higher education on a national scene, and then very specifically how that shows up at the University of Vermont in very specific ways in a state the size of Vermont. I see the impact it has on students who can't afford housing, and the impact that this has on the surrounding neighborhood is profound. And again, my neighborhood is in the shadow of the university, and I love that. I love living next to the university. I love walking to work through campus. I love living next to students. I've got a rental right next to me. But it's becoming untenable, and I think staff, faculty, student-centered voice is important to have on the board, and that's primarily why I'm running. And again, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that in detail if you'd like to have that conversation. More information and pamphlet, look that up, find me in the hallways, find me in the cafeteria. I am more than happy to continue this conversation ahead of the 20th. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Troy.
Carol? Stand up and kind of approach.
I do it subtly, but I got the job done. Carol?
Okay, I'm Carol Odie, and I'm running for re-election to the UVM Board of Trustees. So I'm the granddaughter of immigrants. My grandparents came to this country without speaking any English, and my father was the only one in his generation my mom's to go to college at all. And he was only able to do that because of the GI Bill. He had served in the Navy in World War II. So I graduated from UVM and I was a Vermont school teacher. I graduated from law school. I'm a Vermont lawyer, but I think the experience that has helped me the most to be a good board of trustee member is my 10 years in the past as a school board member. There are 25 trustees. 9 of them are legislatively elected, and those 9 serve on the Vermont Agricultural College Board. And that board has elected me 4 times to be its chair. 6 years ago, I did what I've been doing since the session started, and I've been going to each of you to ask you what your issues, concerns, and questions are about UVM and your ideas. And 3 issues 6 years ago, when I did this, bubbled up: affordability, accessibility, and housing. For affordability, we've kept tuition flat for several years, and now with inflationary pressures, inflation's gone up. Tuition's gone up for out-of-state students by some, and then for in-state students for a lesser amount. Also, families in Vermont who send their children to school, to UVM, can do it without having to pay tuition. Accessibility, it's easy to go from UVM to state colleges to community college and back and forth now. And we're working now on Vermont Technical College, making that easier. And for housing, we've added hundreds of new beds, one with a public-private partnership in South Burlington, where 2 buildings, one is built, the other one's just about being finished. That's for graduate students and for faculty and staff, although we have some undergrads there now too. And we also have a long-term lease on another spot in South Burlington for juniors and seniors to live. I've loved serving on the UVM board. I ask for your support so I can continue. And if elected, I would like to continue taking your input over time so that I can continue to bring your and Vermont's priorities to the Board of Trustees. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Carol. All right, thank you, everyone. I promise next week we are in room 11. I promise.
Yeah.
Well, scheduled to be, let's just say that. We can go offline.